Let me just watching the stream here. Rodney, you should see it pop up on your wherever you're watching the stream here in just a minute as well.
Okay, yeah.
And sometimes there's a little bit of a delay here, so sometimes it's 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm still seeing the photo.
Me too. There it goes. All righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Wegog here. I've got a couple of guests, as you may have expected. We've got Mr. Rodney Peterson here on the line, as well as Mike Turber from 5x5 News. Guys, welcome to the show. I don't know if we can call it a show, but we'll just call it a show.
It'll be a show. We'll make it that way.
Before we get started, I just want to make one note. We've had some issues with like people trolling in the chat in the past. We've got a couple of moderators. This is just kind of for everybody that's in the chat. So just a couple simple rules for people in the chat. One, just please show respect. Disagreement's fine. Lack of respect is not. So just want everybody to be respectful. We do have moderators that will give you a warning and then just give you the boot if you're not being that way. If there is a violation of YouTube's community policies, you'll just get the boot. So just keep an eye on that. Want to make sure everybody feels part of the conversation. I'm not going to say any more about that, but just do know there are moderators and that will be taking care of it. So let's get started here. Rodney, I'm intrigued by your story. I know many others are intrigued by your story. So Rodney is the first person I've met that has actually met Stephen Paddock. So welcome to the show, Rodney. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. And as many of you know, Mike is from 5x5 News. He has a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, it's 5x5 News. On YouTube. There will be links in the description of this video here after it's done. So guys, the way I'd like to get started, if we can, is Rodney, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? We'll start off with that, and then just kind of tell us about, I want to hear the whole story if you can in your own words, you meeting Paddock, how that all started. I know it was in summer of 2016 in the middle of the night. And just kind of lead us through that. And then we'll kind of do a little bit of questions and answers after that. And Mike, if there's, I know you've spoken with Rodney on a number of occasions. If there's something you can add while he's telling a story, I just want to keep this casual and just kind of a free flowing conversation if we can. So okay. without further ado, Rodney, why don't you go ahead and, give us some info.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Rodney Peterson. I'm in the music business. I've been to Las Vegas a number of times. I'm roughly the same age as Stephen Paddock, have a lot of things in common with Stephen Paddock, which I never really knew until after he did this, because I only met him once, but a lot of things happened in that meeting that were really kind of foreshadowing the whole thing. First of all, this occurred, it's verifiable anyway. People should know that. Both of us have MGM players cards. So at some point, matching MGM players cards will prove that we are at the same table, which lends credence to my story. Also, I would never have remembered meeting Stephen Paddock, except for the fact that I came across a comment in the Los Angeles Times from someone else who had, and they had nearly the same experience I did. They wrote about it in such a way that it was extremely detailed. With a lot of, it hit like every possible thing you could possibly hit as to what I thought happened. And a few days after that, I began to remember, something like this happened to me too. What is it? What is it? And I tried to pull it out of my memory. And, it only came in bits and pieces at first. But in about, I think 3 or 4 times I had the full thing. And so I met him on July 6th, 2016. At the Excalibur in Las Vegas, early in the morning. I sat down and played blackjack with him at the Excalibur. And it was him and Mary Lou Danley at the table. I bought in for $1,000. So obviously we have a record of that on my player's cards. And I was playing hit and run blackjack, which is where you use a mathematical system. You go from casino to casino, you eke out a profit, and you move on. And this happened early in the morning. We were the only three at the table besides the dealer. So he's staring at me, like he doesn't want me there at all. And this continues for most of the time I'm playing blackjack. And I'm noticing that he's betting like $175 a hand. That seems to be what he's betting most of the time. One black chip, 3 green chips. And Marilou Danley is betting red chips, maybe 10, 25 at a time. But, much less than what he's betting. Anyway, he keeps staring at me. And I'm bearing up my bets because I'm using math to win money, which by this I mean starting very low as the table will allow. And then, if I'm losing, gradually increasing it a bit. And the idea is to hit a winning streak. Once you hit a winning streak, you stay at that level until you lose a hand. Then you go right back down and you do the whole thing again. So what made him talk to me is this bizarre interest that we both have in math. So after the blackjack game was over, and I think there was a little bit of small talk towards the end, but most of the time he was just staring at me, staring daggers, like he didn't want me there. And I thought, fuck this guy, I'm going to, sit down and play anyway. After the game was over, after I cashed out, he starts walking up to me close to the blackjack table. I'm not sure if he was still playing at that time or he had also quit or whatever, or he followed me, quit right after I'd gone to the casino cage. In any event, the first thing he said to me was, I saw what you were doing there, that's smart. And he was referring to varying up the bets using math to win money and the way I was doing it, which is something I've done for quite some time. Wow. I didn't realize don't mind me. I was just noticing that my hand somehow came in the picture and they look fidgety. Like if I was at a Supreme Court hearing or something and sitting behind the guy who was nominated, but believe me, no hidden signs here. Nonetheless, he came up to me and he says, so what are you doing there? That's smart. Talking about the math. First of all, this is really odd in and of itself. I've played hundreds and hundreds of casino blackjack games, and there has never been an instance where somebody came up to me and said anything about math. The only people that have ever said anything about math and the way I bet are people at the table, and that's usually because I start the conversation. Nobody had ever done that. And I mean, I've done that for so long, and it almost always works too. You can actually do pretty well. But the point is, he started talking, and eventually he got into this rant about casinos cheating. And, I know that casinos don't have to cheat. The mathematical advantage, is with them. So I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm not sure if he was talking about blackjack or video poker, but nonetheless, he said, wow, they do cheat. And no, they don't cheat. And this started this argument. And then he started talking about revenge on the casinos, which, something I've thought of a lot. Believe me, a lot of people who lose money would love to get back at casinos. It's not a unique phenomenon at all. Probably hundreds of people have that feeling every day for the first time in Las Vegas. Very, very few actually do anything about it. So, so we get into this conversation about revenge. And, anytime I thought about it, I realized that it's ridiculous. It can't be done. How? So I said to him, how? How are you going to get revenge against the casinos? They'll have you before you get 10 feet on the floor. Because this is what they would do. You come out of an elevator shooting a gun or whatever, security can be all over you. You're going to be dead before you know it. And he got really angry at that point. And what he did is he started fidgeting all around and pointing toward the ceiling with his fingers. And he yelled at me, look all around you. What do you see? Windows, with that kind of emphasis. And there it was. And of course, I knew he was talking about guns, even though I don't know anything about guns. I mean, I don't even know if I've ever shot a gun, to be honest with you, let alone be interested in to the extent he was. So, I thought, well, hey, that's kind of cool, video game revenge type of thing. I had no idea about anything in his background. I just thought he was nuts. He'd already told me he lived at Mandalay Bay, which is kind of funny in and of itself. Because he said, I know, I live here at the casino. I said, here, this dump, Excalibur? He said, no, Mandalay Bay. You live at Mandalay Bay, right? What the hell are you talking about? So
It's probably a figure
all
of
kinds
speech.
reasons to think it was crazy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm saying it's probably a figure of speech, but answer if you can expand upon this a little bit. When he said the word windows and looked around and said, "Look around you. What do you see? Windows." How did you gather the gun connection from that?
What else could it be?
That's a little confusing.
What else are you going to do from Windows? If you're,
Well, I know. I was just saying. I didn't know if there was something else that was a little bit more straightforward or whatever. It's just
logic,
but you could tell.
It sounded like, and in my mind, I was thinking, I'm not thinking Mandalay Bay or anything like that. I'm thinking like if anybody's going to do something like that, they're going to do it from like Aria, and they're going to do it when the strip is full of pedestrians or something of that nature. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. You never get away with it. Who the hell even has the ability to set something like this up? I don't know anything about guns. I just got the general idea. Yeah, cool. Video game stuff, whatever, Go ahead, crazy guy. And that was it. And I think I might have given him my card or, Marilou. Actually, I didn't give it to Marilou because Marilou hardly talked to me. But I think I gave him my card.
When she was there, though, but was she right beside you when all this was when that conversation was happening? She heard all that.
She heard everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you feel she understood
most of the time? Huh? Go ahead.
Do you feel she understood what he was talking about, or was she just quiet or what?
Well, in retrospect, of course she understood what he was talking about. She helped him load bullets, so of course she knew. Yeah, I mean, I could pick it up, and I didn't know anything about guns, so obviously she knew.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that would effectively place her in knowledge of knowing something like way back. Like this is July 6th of 2016, right?
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Okay, go ahead.
That's pretty much it, and that was I never heard from him. And a few days later I left town, and then everything happened on October 1st. And naturally I was very interested because, I get it. I get why somebody might do this as a gambler, and it's something that, is horrible and it's happening, and Jesus, So from the start, I thought it had to be gambling. It had to be that this guy, that's the only reason somebody would do something like this in my mind, in Las Vegas of all places, because it made no sense. It was horrible. It was tragic. It was heartbreaking. And the reason I found out about it so quickly is I work out of home in music licensing and publishing, and I was refreshing the Reddit, latest news stories, and up it came. And the minute it did, I followed that link, and I followed that link all that morning until I fell asleep for a few hours. Even before Stephen Paddock was named as a suspect, I was following, links about him and so on, or, on 4chan and whatever. As soon as they mentioned a name and an address on places like 4chan and Reddit and various forums, I was just going all over the place trying to find information. And of course, we didn't even think it was Stephen Paddock at first. Everybody thought it was Gary Danley, who has a very bizarre Facebook profile, or did at that time. And then later on that morning, we found out it was Stephen Paddock. And I didn't even realize that I'd even met the guy until October 18th, when I read an article in the LA Times about Jesus Campos appearing on the Ellen Show. And somebody had wrote a comment, and the comment was a guy from Canada. Either he's a resident of Canada who was visiting Canada, he met Stephen Paddock in a casino. And the guy told Stephen Paddock much the same thing that he told me, except they had a conversation about other things that did involve guns. And but he also, this guy who wrote it, also went into a lot of detail. And that's why I remembered meeting Paddock. But everything Paddock and I talked about was gambling and math, and nothing to do with what he actually did or how he would do it, other than the generalization of windows. That's the only way, the only thing he said that I could get, that he was talking about guns.
But he did.
According to you,
he said. According to you, he did say that basically he was feeling like he was cheated and that he was going to enact revenge or whatever. So those words.
The casinos were cheating, and and I disagreed with him, and that's what set off the argument. Right. And it was basically a very short argument because he was yelling, and my impression is that he thought that I was stupid, that. And my impression of him was that he was a drunken slob, didn't look like anything special. He's slovenly. As I recall, he's pretty fat and, with mustache and beard, which is not the way most of the photos present him. But, he looked like Grizzly Adams to me.
So you said you realized after reading that article, Rodney, on October 18th, that you may have spoken with Stephen Paddock, or that you had spoken with Stephen Paddock. And then what was your thought process after that, after having realized that? Did you reach out to, I know you reached out to the LVMPD and the FBI regarding your interaction with Paddock, but was that immediate, or was it something you waited to do until you had more information? Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Well, first of all, I was contacting lawyers and journalists and the FBI and police before I even knew any of this. I was contacting them from day one because I said, look into gambling. This is what this is all about. And I recited all kinds of evidence that could back me up, including the 1980 bombing of Harvey's Lake Tahoe. And that was all about gambling. That was a guy who wanted to blackmail the casino because he had lost money there. And if he had wanted to kill people instead of blackmail the casino, he could have easily done that. If that casino had not been evacuated at that time, it would have killed hundreds, more than likely, because it basically destroyed a huge part of the building. So there was, precedent for this type of thing happening, for gamblers being angry and doing this type of thing. And you occasionally hear about it on international news stories as well, where people do this type of thing, not necessarily what Paddock did, but they'll go into a casino, they'll try and, throw gas on the blackjack tables, light it on fire, go in with a gun or whatever. It does happen. There's a lot of disgruntled gamblers out there. And so, that was my feeling from the very first. This was all about gambling, because it made sense to me that that's the only thing that could drive somebody to this kind of anger logically, to just fire on a crowd for no reason. And so for the first 2.5 weeks, I didn't realize I'd even met Stephen Paddock. I was still sending out emails anyway, because it was a very deep and personal connection to this case. And then after I read that comment, first of all, it shocked me. I knew, right away it was important. I just knew everything about that comment was spot on. And I will read that comment to people here in a minute so they know what I'm talking about, or from my memory as best as I can. Unless you have it there. Do you have it there, Mike? If you do,
no,
you can
no, I don't have it.
Okay,
I don't have it either.
As best as I can. But the point is, after I read that comment, first of all, I knew it was important, but still, it took several days to actually get the memory. First of all, it was kind of like a shock. I didn't know what the hell I was thinking. Wait a minute, I know this guy. Somehow, there's something here. And that comment, because everything was so similar in what we had both experienced, but I didn't know that yet at the time. All I knew is this was really important. And it kind of came back to me in very, very hard to understand what's going on with my mind. What is, I don't understand all this, but yet, something's happening. It took several days for the whole memory to really gel, and it was an extremely confusing and stressful time. And once I did, I basically instantly developed PTSD from the whole thing. And, I started going into attacks of that. But anyway, this is what the comment in the Los Angeles Times says. If you can find the article about Jesus Campos appearing on the Ellen Show, that article was published on October 17th, 2017. The comment was posted under that article on October 18th for 2017 at 4:34 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And it was from a guy named Robert.Roberts0361. And this is what it said. Quite a while back, talked to that guy in Edmonton casino. Same guy, Filipino girlfriend. Lived in a hotel in Vegas. Asked him why he came to such an out-of-the-way place like Edmonton. He said, just to gamble. Talked about nothing you can do about the casino's cheating. If you tried to sue, they would bury you with their lawyers. He said he tried that once. He was going to do something about it. I did mention one part. He also mentioned, the guy also said he was a retired accountant. He mentioned he was a retired accountant. Okay, so we're up to the lawyer part where he said he tried that once. And, he was going to do something about it. Now, according to this guy, Robert Roberts, then he started talking about an AR-15. And this guy says, I didn't know what that was at the time. I'm retired military. What is that military talk? He said M16. So when I left, I thought, that guy is an American. He can't get guns in Canada. Can anyone help me figure out the dates he was up here? I recall he said he drove in from British Columbia on a 2-day layover from a 19-day cruise. Maybe 30th September 2016, 3 question marks, and that's the end of the comment. And the instant I saw that, I thought, Jesus Christ, this hits every possible post right on the head. It was strange. It was shocking. I just knew it was important. And it was. Turned out to be very
Rodney, talk about the comparison of what you feel you have and what you feel Paddock has as far as a condition is concerned.
Well, I didn't know any of that at the time when I met Paddock, but after what he did and learning more and more about him, and the math connection especially, I began to feel that we probably both are either high functioning autistics or we have Asperger's, something like that, and that's why he connected with me about the gambling and the math. But, in that condition, neither of us is really going to connect well with the other on a personal level. So, we didn't become friends. And if we had, it probably would have been really disastrous and probably would have been, I don't know if I would have been able to prevent this tragedy. I do know that, if I had been around him and he kept talking about it, and especially if he started talking about a plan, I would have turned him in right away. If I thought there was something, realistic in what he said. I thought, at the most, it's like a bizarre fantasy. This is something that, very unlikely ever to come true.
Okay, well, One Hawk, in the background there, you asked about, did Paddock play table games? Eric said, no, he does not play table games. He pretty much only plays the video
tell that
poker.
to the people in some of the articles in which they quote, playing blackjack with him. This guy gambled up to 14 hours a day. He just wanted to gamble no matter what, apparently. So, and besides that, either his player's card or Mary Lou Danley's MGM player's card is going to show he was at that table. Same with me. But it's internal data, and it has to be released under a judge's order during discovery of a civil suit. to my
Well,
knowledge.
and you reached out to, at what point did you start to reach out to the FBI and LVMPD regarding your experience? Because I know you had told me that you had conversed with them a little bit, right?
Well, I
Rodney,
called them. Yeah,
yeah.
I called them right away before I even knew I was involved, and I said, "I'll bet you this is what happened." And then after I was involved, of course, I let them know right away after I found out I was involved. I found out I was involved as a spectator, as somebody who knew this guy, who met him, who actually heard what he planned to do, in very non-specific terms. So all in all, I contacted the FBI 4 times, twice before and twice after. And I attempted to contact the Las Vegas police right away. And it was only in January that I was actually able to talk to the police. And that was only because there were names of officers I could call for in the FIT report. And I did. That Monday after it was released on a Friday, and that Monday morning, I was on the phone to the first guy listed in the book, a Detective Alsap.
And did either the FBI or the LVMPD give any indication that they were taking a deeper look into your account, like to gather, surveillance footage or anything like that?
No, the FBI did call me, and they were at my door, but I was on my way to Las Vegas at the time. So they basically interviewed me on the phone. I said, go to my Instagram account. I've written all this out in very deep detail. And I never heard from them again. And I did recontact the Las Vegas police just to see if I was being taken seriously. And it was, it was really hard to get through to them that next time. And finally, this is the Instagram account, by the way. And by the way, people, it's a frozen account. You can read everything there that's there, but you can't, to my knowledge, you can't make any comments. And you can't contact me there. And the reason it's frozen is because I fight with idiots. And that's always been the case whenever I've been
Join the crowd, bud.
So in any event, but I didn't do anything. I didn't try to sign back on. I just wanted the account to stay up so that people could see those archives. And if you go to the very top, by the way, the account name is Rodney 4K at Instagram. It'll tell you exactly which posts to search for that have the relevant information. And there's a series of 3 of them. There's the one when I first remembered. There's another one in early November. And finally, another one just before Christmas. And then there's all kinds of other stuff in between. Mostly stuff about collecting music and movies and things like that. Because that's another thing that Paddock and I have in common that points to Asperger's and autism, is being obsessed with things. He was obsessed with guns, which I had no idea of. And also gambling, of course, I had no idea the extent of that either. But I know that I have an obsession with music and movies, and, thankfully do work in the music industry. And, it's similar. That's what you would do, I guess, if you were. So that's why I think we have a lot in common psychologically. A lot of the same issues and problems. And the thing that really hit home to me after I read more and more about him after he did this is he never really acknowledged that. He was in deep denial. He would go to psychiatrist, and instead of, going along with the therapy, he just wanted the medication. So I believe he was in denial. And with me, it's the exact opposite. For Christ's sake, help me. I can't do this on my own. Well, there's a lot of differences between us too.
Yeah, and I don't know how you mentioned differences, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you about. And I don't know how deep you want to get into, or how comfortable you are getting deeper into this, Rodney. But something you had mentioned to me was that you do feel some of the same, like you even just mentioned, like obsession level items, but you direct the energy towards, other things like music collection, things like that. Whereas,
well, when I feel angry, when I have these thoughts, like, a lot of people have the types of thoughts that Paddock did. It's just really, really unusual to act out on them. I don't act out on
And,
them. I
Right.
yell at
and
people
for
at
the
them.
most part, people with autism, it's 99 times out of 100 is generally a nonviolent group. And I'm not an expert to talk about it. And anything I say, please, people, take it with a grain of salt. I'm in no way, shape, or form trying to proclaim I know enough about it to even speak. But what I can say is what I've read, what I've learned, and what I've seen. Just like if you and I were talking, you would probably say, something that you had heard. But the understanding that I have is that it's essentially a nonviolent condition, and then also the other end of the spectrum here is that there's a large percentage of the mass murders and shootings and stuff like that in recent history, or in just in history in general. A large percentage of those people were considered autistic. So there's some sort of, you can't hide from facts. That is there. There's no way to refute it. But I'm not trying to say that autism is the motive. I never said that. Autism is not the cause. I never said that. So don't take my words and twist them around. What I'm saying is that if if you're feeling bad and you have a situation that comes up, you're probably going to react to that situation differently than you would if you were feeling so normal. So what is normal? Who knows? But there's keep in mind that a lot of people who are autistic are highly functioning autistics, and they do incredible things. Very famous people are autistic. So with that in mind, it's not a situation where we're painting an entire group of people a certain way. It's just that there is a rather large percentage of people who have been the perpetrators of mass shootings in history, and that can't really be refuted, and that needs to be looked at. I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but that needs to be looked at.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I think
I'm not a mental health expert either. I mean, the thing is that I'm just pointing out the similarities in our behaviors, in our thinking, and what we do. And there's a lot of it, but I would have no idea of knowing that from the one initial meeting. But I sure picked it up, when they started writing about him in newspapers, and so many things sounded familiar to who I am.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this case is that we're now at almost 1 year, right? We're 1 month short of 1 year, and we have a couple frames of from a security footage of Paddock. You know what I mean? I guess we have some in the hotel as well, but we have no audio. We don't know what he sounds like when he speaks. So it's extremely difficult for us to make any kind of assessment, not having met him like you did, Rodney. But I'm sure that the behavioral experts over at the FBI, have analyzed whatever they were able to find, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some answers with their report here that's due by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go over a couple things here, just give me a minute. I'm going to catch up with some of the things that Eric has actually said. Let's see. Well, I'll say that one. I am gonna actually filter this. Okay, the Eddie, the bike that he rides is a Triumph Rocket, and Eric did not pay Paddock. I won't say that one. I think that's just him talking to me. Tell everybody, yes, you can be rude to my face, Ellen. I guess something was going on in the background that I didn't see the whole thing. And just to let everybody know that for some of us in here, this is not a true reality. This is not our everyday. This is something that we do temporarily, and then when this goes away, we move on to something else. This is Eric's life. This is what's from day one when I saw that interview. Eric's a quirky guy, and he hears me saying this right now, and he knows it. But I've talked to him a lot, and it's really quite extensive actually over the last few weeks, and he's really pretty cool guy. He's really pretty cool guy. But overall, I think that we have to understand that he's in a very precarious position. And the situation is that his mother's still alive. She's in her 90s. And she has to watch TV, and she'll have, this stuff will come on. And so Eric doesn't really want to get in that public light right now, because of that. He doesn't want to make this situation come home. So, let's keep in mind that these are real people. This is a situation that if your mother was, the mother of what this person ended up doing, you would be in a pretty bad spot, and in one way you don't really want to protect your brother or whatever. And Eric knows. Eric, within hours, he wasn't denying anything. If everybody remembers his interviews, he didn't deny a word. He basically came out and said, "Yeah, it's probably him. It sounds like him. He probably did it." And everybody thought that was strange, but in reality, that's about as straightforward as a guy as you can get. So hats off to Eric for doing that, because some people being evasive like that just makes me mad. They're just like, "Oh no, it can't be him." It wouldn't, that denial part. He didn't have that, so we got straight to the point with him. So anyway, and I'll let you guys know some of the things that he says as it pops up here. Back to you.
Yeah. So I did we finish out your story, Rodney? I don't know if we got up to kind of present day, but I know you've been pretty active in trying to share your story. You've even gone to the extent of printing out some signs here, and I'll pull those up on the screen here in just a moment. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how you've been tried to be active in spreading the word of your story, and kind of the reaction you've gotten from the news agencies and the public thus far.
Well, so far, mainstream media won't touch what I have to say, even though I've talked to a number of journalists, and there's a lot of journalists on my mailing list, as well as a lot of the victims' attorneys. In fact, every time I can find, a victim's attorney's name, I write them an email or I call them, or both. So, there's probably at this point like 100 combination, 100 people altogether who are victims' attorneys and journalists that are on my mailing list, and a few other people as well. But nobody in mainstream media will touch it so far, which is really frustrating. And, it really is very frustrating, especially at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And, it's so odd that they talk about everything. Like, at one point they talked about Stephen Paddock's grade school grades, for Christ's sake. I mean, but yet the motive, gambling, not a peak.
And what's been
to be the motive anyway?
Yeah, and it's understandable, given your account. What's been the reaction from newspapers like the Review-Journal? Have they given you a response as to why they're not running with the story? Or have you gotten the impression that they just don't want that angle of the story to be told? Clearly there's, I guess, business interests in Las Vegas that, if that were the case, would not want that story to be told, because it would, for sure affect business.
It's a very harmful story. And, if the victims' full stories come out in court, and if any of this comes out in court during civil suits, yeah, it's going to be damaging, definitely to the casinos and their business. Furthermore, it's not so much that my story by itself is all that important in the scheme of things. It is, but what it's going to do, it's going to open up other people to come forward, probably employees of MGM who interacted with Paddock, or other people who interacted with him, but they don't remember anything until now, just like I, it's needed some way to remember. And certainly I think that will happen, that there will be more people coming out of the woodwork, because I can't believe that it's only just us two people. And I wish I knew who the guy in Canada was. I would love to talk to him. If somebody could, with real internet technology tracing skills, could figure out exactly where and when that comment was posted from, like the exact IP address, obviously that would go a long way to finding out who this guy is. And one way we could also prove that he was telling the truth is, the FBI or whoever, get on the line with Princess Cruises or whichever wow. I was just looking at, never mind. I was just looking at my image and a hand came up, and it shouldn't be there, but I guess we're getting like overlap images or something. Nonetheless, uh, nonetheless, since
The delay.
since there was this 19-day cruise he talks about
Yeah.
to Alaska, you know, at first when I read that comment, and for a long time I was trying to justify it by saying, okay, he's an addicted gambler, so he could theoretically drive to Edmonton and back within 2 days, you know, from a ship in Vancouver. You know, it sounded crazy, but if you're an addicted gambler, you could do it. But I did a little more digging, and it turns out you don't have to do that at all, because every one of those 19-day cruises ends in Vancouver on a 2-day layover. So that means it was over. He wasn't coming back to the ship. He could take his own time, you know. He didn't have to go back to Vancouver at all. He was in Edmonton. He was gambling. Who knows what he was going to do next? But the FBI certainly has access to the passenger manifest of, say, Princess Cruises or whoever the cruises are in Alaska. And there couldn't have been more than 1 or 2 19-day cruises leaving for Alaska in the first part of September. So that's easy to prove. And that can prove that this Roberts guy is real. And, you know, of course, that also helps to prove that what I say is real. Plus, what I say, it can be backed up by matching our MGM players card data, which will show that we were gambling at the same table at the same time on the same day.
Well, and not only that, you would think, and I don't know how long they keep those video archives, but, you know, there's so many different cameras in casinos that it would be pretty easy to pick out that, you know, that footage from that day and show, you know. And I think what you said is key, Rodney, in kind of, you know, your interaction with Paddock was very short, right? But others out there may have had longer interactions with Paddock, may have even gotten closer with him, spent more time at you know, next to him in a casino, and he may have told them more. And so, you know, really my hope too is that, you know, that this does kind of help to pave the way for others to come forward that may have interacted with him but thought it was unimportant, or you know, didn't, you know, they might fear the backlash or whatever the reasons, you know, being that, I think your courage in coming forward really says something and hopefully paves the way for others to do the same. I know, you know, my channel's not huge, but it's something, you know, it's a start. And, you know, I don't think it's fair that the mainstream media hasn't at least given you a chance to tell your story and, you know, do that as well. But I can understand that if they have, especially the Review Journal, you know, they have other motives, which might be helping to protect the Vegas economy. So they might have reason not to do that, or.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. You know, but I mean, it'll, you know, honestly, I think there's so much for the MGM resorts to hide that eventually they'll probably end up with large settlements to the victims rather than, you know, let everything come out that could come out.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm a big believer that, you know, the truth is on time's side, that eventually, you know, all of that will come out, and maybe it will be in a suit down the road. I hope we don't have to wait that long. I do hope that the FBI report, you know, reveals all, but if it's anything like what we've seen so far, you know, the last interview with Aaron Rouse, was him coming out saying that, you know, they still don't have you know, they still haven't ascertained a specific motive. So I have little hope, but maybe we'll be able to paint a little bit bigger picture, and I think that eventually we'll know why. Go ahead.
One thing that's really unique as far as me, you know, that this whole thing has been very unique for me because, you know, I mean, it's unprecedented in my life and certainly unusual in anybody's life, is that I have never heard of another instance where somebody starts, you know, investigating a huge major story like this or a crime, and then along as part of the investigation they found out that they were actually involved. I've never ever heard of that happening before, but yet that's the case here.
Finding out who was actually involved. Sorry, I'm not sure I followed you there.
Finding out, you know, I mean, I've been investigating this story from the very, very start.
Oh, saying how you had actually interacted. I gotcha.
Knew with it was a shock. You know,
Yeah, it's a unique, I think that's a unique part of it for sure. And I don't know if Ramsey Dennison captured that, that angle for his film, but it's absolutely intriguing that you were researching it and then later realized that you had interacted with him. I think that is quite unique.
Yeah, and
Okay,
because of the
I'm
nature
gonna catch
of
everybody up again. All right, let me catch everybody up again here with Eric.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay, to reiterate, Eric and I both are in agreement that the Mary Lou Danley FBI thing is complete bullshit. I can explain part of the reason why is because you can actually do some of mild editing inside Intellius yourself by contacting them or updating whatever. If you update something on your LinkedIn, all of a sudden you'll find it updated over there because they share information. If you can update your LinkedIn, you can say whatever you want. So that gets a little bit hairy. If to be truly vetted, if you guys want, I mean, I can pull Mary Lou Danley's file right now. I actually have it from last year, but I haven't updated it to show where it shows anything about FBI, but it doesn't say anything about the FBI. Okay, Eric wants to say that he has chosen me to be his mouthpiece because he had to dump his previous person. I won't list that person by name, but the person was at the Review Journal that Eric was speaking through previously, and Eric has chosen to speak through me from this point going forward. He doesn't want, no one needs to feel sorry for him. He doesn't really need that. He appreciates it, but he doesn't necessarily need that. So don't worry about that, but he understands that that's just people doing, it's just a normal thing. He won't respond to things that Steve didn't do it. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying there. I think what he's saying is if Steve didn't do something, he's just really, he's not going to waste his time. There's so many things. Keep in mind that he's had to listen to and deal with and what have you, because he's on here. He sees this stuff. He reads this. He sees InServe. He sees this. He watches Mr. Burgundy as well. And so the thing is that when you start seeing these things in the comments, you wonder where these people get this stuff. He knows that Steve did it. He knows Steve. He knows this. So he's not saying that 100% the narrative is correct, but he knows that part of the narrative is correct. And that's another thing I want to touch on is that when people say I'm following the narrative, you're an idiot, point blank, because I don't follow the narrative at all. And I prove that by pulling my own evidence and doing that all on my own. So I have not once gone on there and said, oh, here's the narrative. And yes, I approve it. No, that's not how it works. Anyone that knows me knows over the last 30 some odd years, any of the investigations that I do, I 100% do almost all of the investigation myself. That includes the testing, that includes the questioning, that includes the lie detector test, the whole 9 yards, whatever it takes. That is done through me or by me or definitely with a person that I've vetted. I do not follow narratives. So I don't know if this will knock that part out, but just because if I find a piece of evidence and it seems to fit with the narrative, that doesn't mean that I follow the narrative. It just means that part of the narrative is probably correct.
Well, and Mike, I mean,
just find
like if you look at the lot of evidence, right, and then you just take either the sum of the evidence, 95% of it points to the official narrative, right? And so a lot of people like to concentrate on the 5% that doesn't, or the 5% that's unanswered, right? We're not sure if it may or may not support the narrative, and so. What I'm hearing from you is that you take into account the entire 100%. Is you're not married to the 95% or the 5%. You're taking it all into account.
I'm not married to anything.
Right.
I am married to my evidence. That's what I'm married to, and that's when I take when someone says something that if I gather evidence and I've wrapped it up and that evidence is going somewhere, then that means it's done as far as I'm concerned, and it's ready. It's ready to go. And so me defending my evidence is not me saying that if you don't believe my way, it's the highway. It's not that either. I have a lot of people that don't agree with half the shit that I do, but that doesn't mean I can't get along with them, except for one guy. But anyway,
right.
So anyway, that's just how it is. I mean, and I understand this, and I don't want to call it a game, but I understand the game. I understand the rules. Not my first rodeo. So that's why I'm still here. You know, other people have gone. They're gone. They're doing whatever they're doing, and I'm still here, and I will be here for the long haul. I'm here for one reason only.
Yeah. I mean, you and me both. Okay. Well, I do have some questions for Eric if he has time, but I would definitely like to make sure that we also give Rodney, as much attention as we can on this as well.
Absolutely.
I do have a few questions for you, Rodney, that I've collected from the chat.
Okay.
Why don't we go ahead and move into kind of a Q&A now, if everybody's comfortable with that. If those that are watching the live stream, if you have a question, please just, pose your question in the form of a question, and we'll try to pick them out as we go. First one here I got was way earlier from Mr. Burgundy, Rodney. He's asked, he said, Paddock was seen in the CCTV footage dressed very badly. Can Rodney remember what his dress was like that night? I know you said, I think you said he had the appearance of being drunk, but do you remember how he was dressed at all?
The way I remember it is first of all, he's unkempt, so he's a slob. So it was like a t-shirt and jeans and some kind of sandals, if I recall correctly.
He wasn't dressed
up,
right? Just like we saw
much worse dresser than I am.
So he was not. He was dressed down, if anything. Not.
Oh yeah.
Not what you would standard see people dressed as in Vegas. People tend to dress up a little bit when they go out in Vegas, right?
In fact, I think that's probably why he was at Excalibur, because, he was certainly not have been dressed even casually for Mandalay Bay at one of their blackjack.
Right. Excalibur's
not that he couldn't play there,
joints, right? Yeah.
But he's a slob. Absolutely.
Okay, and did you happen to notice, and maybe Eric can chime in on this as well, Danny Diesel asked if you recall if he was left-handed or right-handed.
No, I don't recall that, but I would assume right-handed, and that's only from me picturing right now him moving his chips. But that doesn't mean anything. I mean, you're asking me a question that I can't possibly know the answer to, and I'm just giving you my impression of what I remember.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, as far as the hard drives are concerned, the hard drives are like everything else about Steve's life. They were his business, not anyone else's, so he got rid of them. And absolutely, Steve acted alone. Look at the CCTV stuff. Steve did everything alone. They looked at every camera in Las Vegas for years and never saw Steve with anyone. Except maybe Mary Lou Danley occasionally. And they have no footage of him with anyone else. So as far as him acting out with anyone else, no, there's the question of whether or not there's two shooters has already been answered. If there's 2, 3, 5, 6,000 shooters, doesn't make any difference. If there are more than one shooter, then those shooters did some weird coordinating shots, because they were all shot from the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay. No shots came from any other direction. There is no evidence to support shots coming from any other directions as far as the audio acoustics is concerned. If you've got evidence that I can use, that I can get into court, by all means contact me. But don't send me some video of some obscure crap. Look at this guy or this flashlight or this or whatever. Please, I will be more than happy to get evidence to court or give it to the right people, but it needs to be something tangible, something I can work with. If it's audio acoustics, I've gone through 30 different cameras and I can't find one. We do have the final shot, and I think actually several people have gotten to that almost simultaneously. And guys, it's hard to be in these rooms and understand that. But I respect the fact that people believe other things, and I have no problem with that. It's just that after a while, people keep pushing it to me. And the reason why I'm responding right now is because people keep telling me that I'm a dumbass, or I'm an idiot, or I must be FBI, or I'm pushing some narrative, I'm pushing some disinfo. So that's why I'm responding to this. It's not that I disrespect the people that believe there's 2 or more shooters. It's just that when you guys keep telling me, or not you guys, or whoever it is, keep telling me I'm FBI. You keep telling me I'm disinfo. I'm a shill. I'm a this, I'm that. You guys can kiss my ass, because that's not the case. I'm not any of those. Okay. So moving forward, sorry to be so brash about it, but at a certain point, you kind of get tired of it. But it's okay. I'm going to be here for the long haul. There's nothing you can do to get rid of me. I'm here. So if you're going to be here, we're going to have to deal with each other. And I have no problem with that. Okay. More from Eric here.
Yeah, real
says,
quick. And maybe Eric can respond to this. Eddie asked this, and I wanted to ask it as well, which is if Eric had any thoughts as to the 3 women that were reportedly registered to Stephen Paddock's room. I think they were named Laura.
Yeah.
Crud. Yeah, but there are 3
Loomer,
names.
Yeah, I think it was Laura Loomer. It was but anyway, no.
It was like Laura. Susan,
Eric and I talked at length about that. I already know what Eric would say, so I don't necessarily want to answer for him. But me and Eric did talk about this. Keep in mind that people are overbooked in these rooms, or they have names registered to the rooms, and the people aren't going to be there. And or who knows? He may have met someone there and said, hey, blah, blah, blah. Hey, you want to use some of my points and go get some food or something like that. He may have done that, but it would be very odd for him to do anything like that would be socially getting out, so to speak. Stephen was very reserved, and not one that was an outgoing person. So he's not going to go out and seek friends and whatever. He's going to be to himself and pretty much a loner. He's an introvert. So that's pretty much it. And let's see, he said may have been hookers, but who knows? They're irrelevant. The 3 women are essentially irrelevant, if even in fact that did happen. That's according to Eric on that.
Okay.
Let's see. I spilled my soul to the FBI, and they put a foot in my ass because I was no more use to them. Since he was essentially he was there. He had 15 hours of interviews with him. Oh, Eric, let me know if I can tell the airport story of when you arrived. So let me know if you can hear that. Just say yes or no. But there's so much that has been said about Steve that's just totally erroneous. We've seen the reports where people say, yeah, I met this guy and he's blah, blah, blah. And he did this for my son. And I was like, what? And I'm kind of getting in the head with Steve and talking to Eric. I have the mindset of Steve. And when Rodney says that he said something out loud in the middle of a casino that might draw attention to himself, I personally have a problem with that. I don't see him doing that. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm just saying that it's just not in his character to do so. Okay, Eric said sure about the airport story. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. We just talked about this today. When Eric flew to Las Vegas, and when he did, what was happening was in Orlando, he was watching the TV and obviously seeing the stories like we were. And then all of a sudden the story came up that the house was broken into in Mesquite. So that's what the hell? I mean, this house should be one of the most guarded houses in the country at that point. So literally within minutes, he had asked, I won't say the other person's name. He asked a person with a name starts with letter D to get the ticket, get him to Las Vegas, and hours he was basically on his way. And when he got there, and on the trip, of course, he told a couple of people in the plane, I guess the stewardess and stuff, who he was. That way, in case something stupid happened, like somebody recognized him and said, "Hey, blah blah blah," who knows what people are going to do. But when he got to Las Vegas, he's one of the people that's not one of the first to get off the plane. He was in seat 1C, I think it was, and that's right at the front. And when he finally got off the plane, basically waited until everybody got by. And he walked off into the airway or the tram or the airlock thing, like he's in space. So he gets off, and there to greet him was 8 officers, 8, all of them with their hands on their gun, basically not knowing what's going to happen either. And Eric just dropped his bag and he just looked at him and said, I can't remember the exact words he said, but effectively, letting them know he's not going to do anything or what have you. So they took Eric through the catacombs of the airport and over to an area inside the airport. and question him right there for the first, like, I think it was the first 4 hours of his questioning was right there at the airport. So, just so you guys know that happened. These are things that are not in the news, and this is exactly what happened. So we have an idea of how things occurred. And that's kind of some of the things that I always find intriguing, is to learn some of the little nuances of the things that happen that we don't hear about. Like a guy that he gets off the plane within minutes, he's in a 4-hour interrogation. I mean, he's had a lot happen to him, and then and keep in mind, he's pissed off that the house is being broken into. These guys are worried about all this other questioning that in his mind has nothing to do with anything. But what about the freaking house? I mean, you guys are idiots. What the hell happened? So, and that's when he, I don't think it was then. I think sometime during that 15 hours, I won't forget what he said, but he basically called them all dumb motherfuckers. And that's in the FIT report. Right before I said it. Okay.
Rodney, Don David Sternman had asked, I think I was clear on this from your account that you had given me, but I'm not sure it came across when you were explaining the story. When Stephen Paddock had mentioned windows, did you look around and see that there were no windows in the Excalibur, or what was your reaction? Because the Excalibur doesn't have very many windows, right? And I think you mentioned that to me.
The thing that came to my mind, well, if somebody's going to do this, they're going to, pick a high profile property like Aria, and they're going to do it from a high floor, and they're going to do it at a time when the strip is full of pedestrians, New Year's Eve, for example. But I thought it was such an unrealistic thing that, it just didn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense at the time because you were in Excalibur, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no windows in Excalibur, and he's already told me he lives at Mandalay Bay anyway.
Yeah.
So, and that's another reason not to believe him. Who the hell lives at Mandalay Bay?
Well, yeah, he did say there an awful lot, and one of the things I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, but he had a couple of I'm sorry, I'm reading in the background too. He had some clothes that were there, or whatever, and then while he was there, they would actually wash his clothes for him. So, and if he stayed in Vegas pretty much an extended period of time.
Well, Mesquite isn't close to metropolitan Vegas, right? So it would make sense that if he was working, if he was working, which is what he was doing, it was his job. I mean, I think Eric had even brought this up. That was his job. So if he went into work and he was trying to get as many hours as he could, it makes sense that he would, take advantage of the comps that the casino was giving them for rooms and just, stay there and work.
Absolutely.
It's not a bad hotel to spend time in. It's a nice.
I spent a lot of time there myself.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I got kicked out of Luxor. I've got some stories to tell too, guys. I had the cops chase me when I was at the entrance of Janet. This is stuff that's on video that I'll be releasing here shortly.
Now, Mike, you always say you're going to release things, and then you never do.
I know. Shut up. I know. And the last shots I screwed up. Guys, I'll tell you why. The situation with the last shots, the video came out to be so long that when I was trying to upload it, and I could try to upload it right here, for some reason it would stop at 40% every single time, and it was driving me batshit crazy trying to figure it out. And I think I figured it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a short version that's going to give you the information you need, short and sweet. Then I'm going to make the long version that's going to show how I came up with it, and when I came up with it. That way there's no question about that. I'm sure there's whatever. And the reason why that was so important to me was because I screwed up the first time when I said that those two shots at the bus stop were the suicide shots, and God, I got hell for that, and rightly so. But yeah, I screwed up. I definitely screwed that one up. But that's life, That's the good thing about science and applying scientific method to everything that I do, is that if I'm shown that I'm wrong, or there's another way or something like that, and it's plausible, then I'll back off of my hypothesis a little bit. But generally, once I get past a certain point, I pretty much run with it. but I'll try not to run with something that I know. I definitely won't run with something that I know to be false. But
Well, and I think
that evidence wasn't going for it.
Yeah, you mentioned the scientific method. I mean, a big part of that is peer review, right? And I think that's such an important tool for us to use in this community is, hey, put out your stuff, but provide, show your work, like your teachers, told you to show your work, and then other people should peer review it. And if it can't be validated, then then that's when I start.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Yeah, I agree with you, Wag. I mean, there's so much. I think I even asked you and Chris and Mr. Visual and Burgundy. I mean, I'm sending my stuff to people all the time. And just say, hey, what do you think about this? And how's it look? And they're like, holy crap, or damn, you're an idiot. Either way, I'll check it out. But that I don't do much. I don't do a whole lot of videos and analyzing. I don't have time to do like some of the things that some of you guys do, which is just awesome that you do it. I mean, when you guys are sitting there going through these videos like with a fine tooth comb, I mean, God, that's just, I wish I could just sit here all day long and do that. And make a living doing it, but unfortunately, I've got to pay bills too. But it's having your stuff peer reviewed is important. I mean, I don't want to name names, but there's somebody that did an early audio analysis that was wrong, completely wrong. I mean, just absolutely unbelievably wrong. And so many people that was their Bible for so long when it came to the audio analysis, and it's just pure wrong, and it's sad. So anyway, he did bring a lot of people to that section of science. So that was pretty cool.
That was really weird. I just got kicked off.
You bounced out of your own call.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I kicked you.
No, Mike, it was
I'm trying to do
really strange. Like I got logged out. Like my account logged out, which disconnected me from the stream. Like that was really weird. Okay.
Yeah, I was attacking you at that moment.
Somebody doesn't want it. Didn't kill the stream, so I mean, whatever people are doing, it ain't working. But okay. Do we have any more questions? I know there were some questions that came through. Any more questions for Rodney? If somebody can post those back in chat, I'll try to scroll back and see if I can find any as well.
Well, since I have the opportunity here,
please.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay. I can hear you.
Since I have the opportunity here, I don't see myself on screen, but no big deal. There I am. Anyway, if people want to get in touch with me, Twitter account is active. It's Rodney 4K. So pretty simple to find it, really. And all the tweets that I have on there so far are about this, because this is something I've been trying to tell people for months, ever since, even before I remembered. But once I remembered, then, I kicked it into a really high gear. And it's been very frustrating. And, it's finally starting to happen where people believe me. And thank God for that.
It's going to be a rough road, Rodney. And Rodney and I have had a lot of talks. I'm the first person to actually go out to him. And the way I kind of met Rodney was very early on. And Eric, I'll get those here in just a second. Very early on, within 2 or 3 days, really, after this whole thing started, I started noticing a pattern. And because I've done this before, so I correlated to previous patterns, and then I start seeing something, and the pattern that I was seeing was that the possibility existed that Stephen may be autistic or have some form of autism or something like autism because of the symptoms or the things that I was seeing. I can't say that I'm right. I can't say that I'm wrong. Eric doesn't believe he was autistic at all. So Eric and I have a disagreement there. But I do. I believe there's something there. I don't know what, but there's something there that causes the different mannerisms and the things that happens. And we see it in Rodney. Rodney's very personable, very easygoing guy, and very approachable. So what happened was I had mentioned this to certain team of attorneys. We'll just say that. I won't mention specific names. But when I mentioned that to them, it was like, what? No. And it was kind of like, yeah, okay. And put it on the back burner. Well, what was happening is a lot of the questions that were being asked of me to get answers for, I was getting answers, and so my credibility and integrity with all the stuff, as far as the attorneys are concerned, as far as the groups that I was talking to, obviously rose to the top. So pretty much people started listening to me. And then what happened was Rodney sent out this blast of emails to every attorney, every writer, every PJ, everything. PJ's a photojournalist. And so what happened was one of the people that got one of his emails remembered me saying what I thought had been a possible contributor to what was going on, was the possibility that Paddock was autistic. And then, of course, Rodney's story came in, very well written. The first one I think he said he had an issue with, but the second one he wrote very well. And then that was forwarded on to me to go check him out. And I did. I left within I think I contacted Rodney on a Friday, and by Saturday afternoon I was over there. And we were talking. We talked. Rodney, how long did we talk for? 6 hours? 8 hours? It was a long time.
Yeah, it was most of the day that Saturday, as far as I recall. Yeah.
Yeah. We had some coffee and stuff, and so we covered a lot of ground, and we did. I did an interview
Sunday,
with him.
Actually,
so
I mean, it doesn't matter, but I
think
Sunday.
Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, anyway. It was on the weekend. I remember, and Rodney, I don't know if you remember this or not, or if I even told you, but it's when I left there, my mind was just racing with all of these possible scenarios being explained one way or another. It's like some of the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit. And it was so frustrating at the beginning of this because we didn't have any information. We didn't have any pieces of the puzzle to put together. So it was aggravating. And when Rodney came up with some of the things he was saying, I was like, okay, well, that actually makes sense. And it started getting together. Now, am I saying that Paddock was autistic? No. Am I saying Rodney's autistic? Rodney doesn't even know. So he's not been officially diagnosed. So neither one has been diagnosed that. So we can't really say that they are, but people pretty much know about themselves. And, we self-diagnose ourselves, and we go to WebMD and we scare the hell out of ourselves. But other than that, we understand it, and we don't necessarily have to go get someone else to tell us this. But it made things understandable. And as time progressed and I moved forward in the investigation, other things were being answered. And then that letter came in, and I went out to Rodney, and then that's when we talked. And I told Rodney at that time, I said, this is going to be a very frustrating experience, because getting people to believe that this information is incredibly difficult, especially if you're someone, number one, claiming that you've met Paddock, and then you're going to claim that Paddock has a mental situation. I don't want to say condition or disorder or whatever, because then somebody will say, oh, that's not the right term, but whatever. And all of these different things. And I knew that it's going to be a roller coaster ride. And I've talked with Rodney a few times, and in his text messages to me, I can tell he's frustrated. He's just, imagine having this story that you want to tell, knowing that as soon as you open your mouth, that half the people are going to blast you and say you're full of shit. What are you making this up for? You're going to have a GoFundMe account next thing we know, and you're just doing this for notoriety or fame. I can tell you this: he's not doing it for that. Sometimes when he's speaking or when he's writing or something like that, his points may not come across exactly right, not right, but just the way he really wanted them to. And I understand that. And I'm the same way. I say stuff from a matter-of-factly kind of scientific way. And then sometimes I come across some people are butthurt about it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, whatever. So anyway, moving forward, Rodney's got an uphill climb, here's the deal. As far as the dates, we were able to determine that Stephen was in Las Vegas up through July 2nd. And he was also there starting on, I think, July 11th. But that area in between is a gray area, and Rodney was right in the center of that. So we can't pinpoint Steve being there at that time. And it's very frustrating for me, frustrating for Rodney. And keep in mind, Eric's done what he can do. There's really not much more he can do other than, when Rodney remembers something, he can go forward. Rodney did mention that Steve looked disheveled or had grown somewhat of a beard, and his hair was longer or what have you. And Eric flatly denies that because what Eric's saying is that the comps that you get at the hotel include obviously haircuts and stuff like that. And Steve always took advantage of that. He would get a haircut every 3 days.
I'm just saying what I remember.
That,
you know, I mean,
yeah, I understand.
you know, I mean, I can't remember everything in exact detail. Penn Jillette recently wrote something about he was a storyteller, and storytellers get exact details wrong. And certainly there are some of the exact details I've gotten wrong, but nonetheless, you know, all the impressions are what I remember. So, you know, I mean, I just remember him being a slob, Grizzly Adams. That was my, you know, that was my impression.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can tell everybody is that I've interviewed Rodney twice. I've talked to him on the phone. I've texted with him, God knows how many times. And I can tell you this. Number one, Rodney definitely believes what he's saying is true. I did a voice stress analysis on him without him even knowing it. And during a live conversation, I ran a voice stress analysis on him. And while we were talking, he was within normal parameters. So he was not lying, or he was not saying things that he believed to be a lie. So, you know, voice stress analysis is not obviously 100%. Same thing with lie detector tests or anything like that. Jack Charmarco, which is the number one lie detector guy of all time. He even says that. I mean, he's right up the road. But
well,
when you think about
faked or yeah, I mean, there's ways to get around those kind of tests, right? And so
absolutely.
It's just like everything else. It's another piece of evidence, either, you know, supporting or you know, negating something.
Right. And sometimes, you're basically adding to the pile, and eventually that pile of evidence that supports what you're doing is really big, and the rest is really small. So you kind of run with it to see where it goes, you know. But ideally, that other pile is never going to be a zero pile. It's never going to be absolute nothing, you know. As much as we say something 100%, we're never really 100% on anything. I know I'm not, but especially when it comes to gathering evidence, and because there's some weird things that happen that we don't think about or foresee or what have you. And that's what it is. I mean, hell, I called Laura Loomer that night that I thought I had a second shooter. When that laser, I lined it up and went with the second tower with that strike mark that was over there by the fire hydrant. And, I was wrong on that. We tested it.
I've had my fair share of being wrong about things as well. I mean, Mr. Burgundy can attest to that. Hey, Rodney, I have a couple more questions here that have come in for you.
Okay.
Another one about there's actually a number of people have asked more questions about Paddock's appearance. Specifically, do you remember his eye color, if his ears were attached or detached, or if he had there were some photos that made it look like there was a 13 tattoo on his neck. If you remember anything about the eyes, ears, or if he had any tattoos.
Just that, you know, my impression was Grizzly Adams, you know, that slob, telling fantastic stories about living in a casino that doesn't let people live past 30 days there, which is true for all Las Vegas casinos. And I think pretty much the official policy is more like 14 days. So, you know, it didn't make any sense. And, you know, and for some reason I remember sandals, but then I also wear sandals. So, you know.
Okay. And nothing specific about his eyes or ears?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And nothing to the level of granularity of his eye color or ear appearance. No. Okay.
I wasn't going to date the guy. So,
yeah, no, I get you.
It was just a really unusual thing for him to come up and start talking to me about math. I thought, this is just weird. You know, I mean, it's not something, nobody does that. And I mean, you know, and I know for a fact that when I play this way, and by the way, Mike can also prove, because he's got records of my MGM players card data, that I have never lost any blackjack game in any MGM Resorts casino since at least 2012 is how far back as they go.
Well, good luck playing there from now on.
Yeah, well, it's also true of another casino, which I was at for like twice a week for almost a year, Kumash in Solvang, which is outside of Santa Barbara. And, you know, I don't have the official records, but if I needed to get them, I could.
Well, I don't know if you winning or losing actually, well, except for I guess it does lend some credence to why Paddock interacted with you, right? Because he saw what you were doing and you were winning.
To the math thing, you know, that
right.
You know, that there was actually a math connection, because, you know, that we know that he used math to figure out the shooting angles and all this kind of thing. And, you know, video poker, a highly, highly addictive game, is very mathematically oriented. This is something else that possibly could have been part of the motive, is that there are such things as, I don't play video poker, but I read about it a bit after this happened in one of the forums on Las Vegas, whatever. There's links to it in my Instagram where I actually wrote that video poker in optimum circumstances can pay out 100.8%. If you know what you're doing, you don't make any mistakes, you got a large enough bankroll. But they were replacing some of these player advantage video poker machines with machines that did not give the player the advantage, which is akin to what you see on the strip, that 3-2 blackjack is replaced with 6-5 blackjack. By the way,
right? Yep.
5 blackjack.
Yeah, the highest payout video poker machines, I've played a little bit, they're hard to find. They're usually, you know, sometimes there's only one of the higher payout machines in a casino, and sometimes not at all. Or sometimes you have to go into like the high rollers area to find those machines. So you have to, you know, pay for bigger bucks to find a 9-6 machine.
Steve knew where they were.
Oh, of course. Yeah, somebody that's a professional would absolutely know how to spot those and play those specific machines. So yeah, there's a lot of not only just math, but strategy that goes along with it. And, you know, and the compounding, playing the right machines with playing during the right periods, you know, when the comps are higher, or if there's some kind of promotion going on, you know, Paddock would have known all about that. It sounds like I've heard some accounts of him.
Well, in fact, his Caesar's Palace casino host said that he quit coming to Caesar's Palace after they switched out the machines there. So when he was talking about casinos cheating, that might have been what he was referring to, rather than, you know, what most people think of as cheating.
Right. Just taking those machines out would seem like possibly a way to cheat back the guests, because you're thinking about the most profitable ones. Sure. You want to give us another update? Yeah.
There we go. According to Eric. Okay, here, Eric, this goes back actually a little bit, because I somehow skipped over this before. But so the person I'm responding to has actually probably been a while since he asked this, but Eric says, and I'll answer one more thing for One Hawk Sober. I don't effing know anything else, and that is the problem. So he'll probably know what that means. I didn't follow that.
You mean Eric said that?
Going here.
Eric
was saying it to another person in the chat that was in there that asked the question. So that person will understand. The Australian guy was no best friend. He bumped into him because he was attached to Mary Lou's family, somehow not a friend. Let's see here.
Brian Hodge?
Well, Brian Hodge, I was the first person to call Brian Hodge. I don't know if you guys know that, but I called him right when this thing happened. And when I called him up, he just kind of was at a gas, because I told him, I said you're about to be put on blast, and you realize you were in the room you're saying you were in. You were not in that room, right? And he just was really quiet. And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Okay, the room number, you somehow transfixed or transposed the numbers, and that's not the room that you were in. So you were not in the room next to Paddock." And then it got real quiet, and then he said he had to go, and that was it.
Bye-bye. I guess you got him, huh?
Yeah, the rest is history there. So I was like, okay. So he's wondering, like, well, who am I? How did I get his number and stuff like this? And I said, well, you know, I can get your number. Obviously, I got Eric's number. Yeah, so exactly. So he said, I think in referring to One Hawk, he said that he must know more, but he really doesn't. Keep in mind, Eric, a lot of the information that Eric gets is not true, like insider information stuff. He gets it the same way we get it, through the media. But, you know, obviously when it comes to the family, it's different. But some of the information that is fed out of LVMPD, and then went my mouse, and all that is he gets it the same time we do.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting about what Eric has that the rest of us don't have is information on Stephen's character. You know what I mean? On who he was and how he acted. And, you know, I know from watching Eric's interviews with the press that, you know, that's where I've gotten a lot of, you know, the character type stuff about Stephen, because he just didn't have a big pool of friends, and he had no social media presence.
Right.
To speak of, you know, so really a lot of it's come out of Eric, and
that's another.
Well, keep in mind Eric's personality and Steve's personality are somewhat quite a bit different. I would say if I was having a conversation with Eric and a conversation with Steve, they would be completely different conversations.
I'm sure they would. I'm positive that they would be different. You know, and the things I have in common with Stephen are just things that I can see, you know, from people writing about him and from the brief interaction I had with him. But obviously there's a whole lot of differences besides. But definitely, you know, I certainly have terrible time making friends and all of that. And, you know, so, you know, it's a shame because it probably, there might have been some benefit in connecting with the guy and for both of us, but we'll never know. And, you know, if there was anything that could have been done to prevent this, you know, I certainly would have turned him in if I knew anything concrete or anything that I took seriously, to the point that it was more, you know, a needle in a haystack chance. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. To 67 Fox Charlie, this is from Eric. I did the interview to make the focus on me instead of my family. I gave him 100,000 watt Eric so that I could control them. Basically, he didn't want the media. He wanted the media attention on him, and that way they wouldn't run around, you know, trying to get everybody on film and stuff like this. And plus, you know, the mother's rather old, so and you don't want to do that. So basically, he acted the way he did, pretty much to keep their attention on him. Obviously, it worked. Yes, it was pretty good TV. See here. He goes, I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose shit like that. But whatever other shit Steve's had, he was a pretty high functioning victim of those diseases. So whatever he had, I mean, he didn't diagnose him, obviously. But he's been around him enough to know that, you know, there may or may not be something there. And we all have that. We all have members of the family, and myself included. When I sit there and I look at myself in the mirror, I go, "Man, I'm a freaking freak." Blah. But and I do silly shit. But I feel like I'm a functioning person, but I get wacky sometimes. But you know, when you think about people that are, I don't want to use the term disabled either, but you know, you never can use the right word, because no matter what word you use, it's the wrong word. But to sugarcoat this as best I can, when Steve was diagnosed bipolar, he had a problem with that. He did not like that diagnosis, from what I was told. And Dr. Winkler is the one that did this. Now, that's a general practitioner. He's not a psychiatrist or whatever. So whether or not a psychiatrist has ever, you know, diagnosed him as anything, we don't really know. But he was getting medication. But the medication wasn't necessarily medication, from what I can see, for bipolar. Anyway, so that we'll get past that. His eye color was almost like mine. It's not really blue. It's not really green. It's kind of in between. My eyes are hazel, if you can see that. So maybe they were that color. But keep in mind, there are some conditions that happen after people die that cause the color to get darker, because the red pigmentation, or the red color, comes out in it, and somebody's going to rip that part to shreds. But there is a medical answer for that is true, that after you die, your eyes can turn what would look to be brown. And he says, it's not really green, it's in between. His earlobes are just like mine. They're just tiny little earlobes, almost detached, but not quite. But they always said that they have blue eyes and blonde hair. That's just an easier way to answer for something. And let me go into the issue about the height. As people get older, they shrink. And I'm not going to say that he shrunk 3 inches or anything like that, but there's discrepancies, and I'm sure Paladin will have a field day with this one because me and him are about to go round and round, I guess. But there was some discrepancies in the autopsy. There's some discrepancies in some of the identification that Steve had, and the identification would say that he was 6'4". Well, here's a common problem with identification, and anyone watching this probably can understand. When you go in for the first time and you get your driver's license, let's say you're 30 years old, not the first time, but say you're at 30 years old and you say blah blah blah. They ask you your height, you say you're 6'4". Okay, and then from then on, you're 6'4". You're not going to remember or shrink yourself over a period of time when you turn 50 or 60 and what have you, that you've shrunk an inch or two. People ask you how tall are you? You're still in your mind, you're 6'4". So he probably carried that height all the way through, and he was a tall man. But when they measured him on the autopsy table, they measured him at 6'1", I believe it was, and there was a huge discrepancy as to whether or not that was Steve. Eric has no problem with whether or not that was Steve. Okay, so just to be very clear, zero.
He has no doubts.
He has no issue with him, huh?
He has no doubts.
Yeah, I don't want to say he has no doubts, because that's like me putting 100% thing on there. But he has no issue with it. In other words, there's nothing in his mind going, oh man, I really think that wasn't Steve. We're Steve. That's not even a thought that he has on a day-to-day basis at all. So I think that's important to get that point across, because he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe in multiple shooter theory or any of that other stuff either. He had no tattoos at all. I want to say this, as far as that 13 that he had on his throat, there's several possibilities that could have come up with, even and I don't want to bring the hooker thing into it, but even when they play around, they'll, everybody's been to a party where you've taken out the black magic marker and you've done whatever to people. I know I have, but that's probably saying too much. And nobody really has a good picture of him. I don't, huh?
I was just going to say, just 13 is a specific number, right? So it just, if that was the case, it would just be very odd, but I don't think it appears in all of the crime scene photos. So I do think it's one of the other explanations. It is more likely, that it was had to do with the shadows and the angle of the camera and, wrinkles on the neck, whatnot.
Who knows? It could have been that. I haven't really, that's something I guess I should actually take a look at. That's one of those little side things that don't have a bearing on anything that I'll take a look at. Nobody really has a good picture of him. I don't think after he got shot, but I think there's a reasonable chance that when you take a 38 to the brain and the concussion might your eyeball color up a little bit. Basically, he just said that taking the 38 shot to the brain, the concussion would obviously cause your eyeball to do something, which obviously we can see in the pics, and that's another area of contention that both Eric and I have. Those pictures, Levi Hancock. That's it. I'll move on.
Yeah, the ones.
And he's absolutely right. Yeah, no problem. They adjusted schedules on the machine to make them worse, and Steve did not get 100% over. Oh, Steve didn't get 100% ever from a machine. He got over 100% by adding his comps and the contest that was running and so forth. So that's how Steve would do it. And Eric, am I okay to release some information right now as far as the amount? I'm just going to say yes. Well, okay. Would anyone like to take a guess as to the amount that Steve won on his last day?
On October 1st?
Uh-huh.
The amount he won?
Yeah, just the winning side, not adding up, the winnings, loss, blah, 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 the drop or any of that stuff. Just as far as the machine is concerned, on your MLife card, it will tell you your winnings for the day. It's not going to tell you how much you paid, but it's going to tell you your winnings. How much do you think you won that day?
Well, he was playing for, what was he? $100, maybe $100 a hand. I don't know, $100,000 maybe. That actually seems, Mike, like it might be low. That would be my guess. I don't know. What are people saying in chat? 70K. We got.
I'm pointing up. I'm giving you higher.
Oh, you're pointing up. Okay, here. Let me get you locked on the screen. There we go. Higher. Okay. $100, somebody said. I don't know, $1 million. Well, you got to think like these machines, it's a small edge, right? So even if you play, more than $1 million, $1.5 million.
No, it was smaller than $1 million. It was around 860,000.
Oh wow!
Is how much that day. But keep in mind too, we don't know exactly how much he bet at that, but we do know this: the information that we do have was obviously there's a $30,000 or $30-some-odd-thousand chips ticket in the room. So I think it's around it's closer to 33,000. So if you take the 860
that he actually won,
and minus the 33, that he actually won. So it's 33,000 that he walked away with. So when you take your ticket and you walk away, that's what your winnings are. So plus, minuses, and whatever. Obviously, if you have a ticket, that means you're most likely plus, and that's it. But we don't know for sure, what the drop was, or what, when he came in, he bought a marker, those kind of things, and
Right.
all of this have to be played into. Who knows? But that's something Eric's got a headache with Birch and doing the final taxes and all that other stuff, and asset searches and all this other crap that they have to do legally. You have to do that when someone dies. I had to do that with my grandmother myself. And he said some of the questions he gets is pretty silly, but it is what it is. We got a mix of people.
Rodney, did Paddock indicate to you if he was overall winning or losing? I think you said.
Oh, he was losing
during that session, right? The session you sat at, with him at?
Mostly losing his hands, because he would joke about it, and it was like a aggressive, passive joking. It was clear that he was not happy that he was losing money, and he was arguing with Marilu a little bit too, but nothing. It just seemed like normal conversation for them, but it seemed a little, odd too.
They were just quietly
they're a couple,
quarreling.
They're like a couple. Playing blackjack, and they're
bickering.
She's not betting as heavy as him, so I got the impression that, and she's mousy. She definitely struck me as mousy.
Gotcha.
She didn't say much to me.
Don David, that was tax info. Eric wanted me to tell you that, whatever that was. Okay. So,
all right, I'm just reading through the comments here. Do we have any other questions?
By the way, will I be able to read this transcript?
Oh yeah. Did you?
Okay.
Did you find it, Rodney?
No, I'm on the page. My computer is actually watching your feed while I'm talking to you on the iPhone. Because I haven't been following the chat at all.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't expect.
I'll read it when whenever we're done.
If you want to read the this was from the gentleman Robert Roberts or whatever in Canada, right? Is that the one you're speaking of?
No, I'm talking about the chat here, the actual chat, the transcription of this chat. People watching us and chatting.
Oh, do you want to read back through it? Yeah,
Right.
You'll be able to. The video will post up on YouTube, and it's usually the chat is available within about 30 minutes. It's not downloadable, the full transcript, I don't think, but you can skip through it and look at the things people said. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you would.
Take everything with a grain of salt.
Okay, well, if you would, whenever we sign off, just give me time enough to read through it. I'm a pretty quick reader, so.
Oh, it will stay up. They will stay up on my YouTube channel. So that link that I sent you to watch the stream, you'll just refer back to that and you can read it all there.
Okay.
And if you have any problems with that, you're welcome to reach out to me. So we are at about 1 hour and 46 minutes in. I did not expect for us to go this long, Rodney. I do appreciate your time. If we want to, we can go a little bit further, or we can call it here. Was there anything else you wanted to share, Rodney, that you didn't get a chance to yet? I want to make sure that we are, give you the full chance to share your entire story in the way you want to share it, so that everybody gets to hear it.
Mostly that you can reach me at Twitter, at the Twitter page Rodney4K, and also, we haven't touched a lot on the legalities of, upcoming civil cases and things like this. But, it's a very weird, complicated case. because of the it's so high profile because of the number of victims and where it happened, as opposed to what most gamblers do, which would be either kill somebody at home or commit suicide or go crazy or whatever. I mean, gambling addiction is a huge problem. And like I said, the guy in Lake Tahoe in 1980, there are similarities in Paddock and this guy in that they were both do-it-yourselfers who constructed like the apparatus to carry out what they needed to do. In the case of the guy in Tahoe, reportedly, his bomb is still at FBI headquarters because it's used as a teaching tool, which is pretty fascinating. But so there was definitely reason to watch, problem gamblers, and I don't think MGM Resorts did that nearly as much as they needed to.
Yeah, well, I think that it's one of those issues that the casinos will say that they handle. They have resolutions for it, but they don't advertise it, right? Because it's bad business practice. Because if you talk about that too publicly, make it too loud, then people may not be able to come to Vegas and relax. You know what I mean? Like that's it kind of kills the buzz, right? And if you're like, wow, it's like going out and drinking and then somebody saying, well, they're alcoholics. So it's like, I know that, but don't remind me because I'm trying to enjoy, you know what I mean? It could just be something as simple as that. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that needs to be talked about more, even not just in the regards to what happened in the Vegas shooting, but, just generally overall, you see, you see hints of that when you're in Vegas anytime.
Yeah, and I think that what will eventually happen, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand civil law to a point, and the victims definitely have a case regardless of what anybody says. And eventually, it's probably going to be in MGM's best interest to cut very, very large checks rather than see all the internal data that they have on keeping problem gamblers gambling, complaints that they've had about Stephen Paddock specifically, and all of that. And they have definitely opened themselves up for countersuits by suing every single victim, which was really a boneheaded move, in my opinion. But that is, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just speaking from what limited law I do know.
Yeah, I haven't heard of. I have yet to hear of a single victim that wasn't completely appalled by that move. Regardless of if it was strategic or if it's standard. You know what I mean? It really just if they had any sense of respect for MGM, it was lost in that move. It's just it was kind of insane. I'm sure that they didn't expect it to be as publicized as it was, but man, I don't think that one ever went through the through the PR team before it was
their PR girl that was there. Her name's Dasha or something like that.
Deborah
she hasn't. She hasn't returned a phone call. But my understanding from a person that either knows her or works with her, I don't remember if the person just knows her as a friend or works with her in the same building. But basically said that she, well, obviously she screwed up. But the main thing was that they did not soften the blow properly by doing that. We understand it's a strategic move by the legal team to protect the assets of the company. Okay, everyone knows this, but there's either another way to do it, and/or they could have done it in such a way that would not have been this bad, But the problem is, it's a dick move. It's a stupid thing to do.
Right.
And it's a bad PR. It's bad everything. It's bad. It just reeks of just absolute, man, it makes me mad. And I'm not involved in it. I'm pissed. I was so pissed when I heard it. Yeah. I wrote this really long explanation of it on Catherine Lombardo's page, on her Facebook page. And it was like, oh my God. And then the definition of an act of terror is now going to be scrutinized like it's never been scrutinized before. In 2012, the United Nations tried to actually come up with a worldwide acceptable definition of what terrorism is. The reason for that is so that it could be, as far as going across different countries and different social and economic and all these different facets of life around the world, the term terrorism has different meaning in different places, because some places it's accepted. It's just that's part of what you do. It's part of their war. Terrorism is a part of it. And for us, we do probably the same thing, but we call it something else. We go bomb people all the time. We hear every day, like today, you heard of the Afghanistan leader of ISIS being killed, but you also heard one of our guys was killed. And are we doing acts of terror around the world? Who knows? But that's a whole nother subject. But as far as this is concerned, I've never seen a definition of an act of terror that did not have a political, ideological, some sort of religious component to it. There was some component that was a gel that would just have everyone in a certain group together with the same ideas, ideology, same religion, same everything, that those people were segregated and they were like, that's the bad people. That's the way they look at it. That's not what this is supposed to be about. But the act of when they chose that definition, and if they're going to call this an act of terror, they're going to have to go back in and really redefine what an act of terror is. And the person that makes that decision, which is going to be your head of the Department of Justice and the head of Department of Homeland Security, and they're going to have to get together and agree. And then the FBI can call it what they want, but they can be overruled because the FBI is under the DOJ. So, that's a whole nother situation. Now, keep in mind, Aaron Rouse said specifically that as far as he's concerned, it's not an act of terror, but it's in the state of Nevada. Their threshold for what causes something to be an act of terror is a whole nother issue. So that's a whole nother show we could do on that. Trust me.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. For sure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that MGM would love for it to be called an act of terror officially.
Yeah. And to Marie D, or I don't know if it's Mary D. Yeah, Marie D. He's not going to send a screenshot of the last messages or what have you that he had with Steve. That the FBI did see all of his messages. I think he said he hasn't deleted his messages for 4 years or so. So they have them all. And that's probably the only people that will ever need to see it.
Great. All right, guys. Well, we are at about an hour and 55 minutes now. I just want to double check with you, Rodney, see if there was anything else. We did go over your Twitter. Rodney's Twitter is, again, Rodney4K on Twitter. He's also on Instagram, which is linked on his Twitter page. So you can just click the link there. It's also Rodney4K. I think it's actually Rodney4K Blu-ray on
Twitter,
but
it's not an active account. I can't edit.
Right, on Instagram,
No,
Rodney4K, you can view it, but you can't comment.
Right,
and
it's like an archive.
Rodney update it.
Right, it's an archive at this point.
Okay. And was there anything else you wanted to share, Rodney? Really appreciate your time, by the way, and you too, Mike, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Weg, Nostradonum,
Close enough. I've been called much worse.
Now I know why I'm getting old. I stumble over words and stuff. Anyway, thank you for letting me tell this story. I've been trying to tell this story for so long, and like I was screaming.
We have a full interview with go ahead. We did in the final go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you didn't catch it earlier, Rodney was interviewed for Ramsey Dennison's next film regarding Vegas. I have no idea how he works in the cutting room, so I hope that it makes it in there. So really looking for Mike's smiling. Mike does, but I'd really look forward to seeing him in that as well, and hearing his story be told further there, and hopefully somebody maybe in the mainstream media will pick it up as well and tell a little bit more. Yeah. I think as time goes on, hopefully we'll hear more accounts like this, and it will, open up the door even wider for people.
And what I'll do is I'm going to package up. Yeah, I'll package up Rodney's interview both my interview that I did with him and also the interview that Ramsey and I did into a more soluble package that we can look at. And we did do the interview for the film, and I don't see it being cut at all. It is an important part because it does bring up another avenue to explore. But at the same, I'm now called the consulting producer of the film. So I do get to look at the stuff before cuts. I don't make the call, but I get to make consulting things. But anyway, and so we'll look at that and try to, we're going to try to keep that in it. But keep in mind, when you're making a film and you've got hours and hours and hours, like over hundreds of hours of film, you got to cut it down to an hour and whatever. A lot of stuff gets cut that we don't want cut. But I think Rodney's probably been there.
Awesome.
And we'll see. Yep. All right, buddy.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
And once again, Mike's YouTube channel is 5x5 News. Go ahead and check him out as well. Really appreciate everybody's time and participation. Thank you for all those that asked questions. If we didn't get to your question, I sincerely apologize. It was not on purpose. It was just a lot of chat and a lot going on when we run these things. So I do appreciate everybody's patience with me trying to run these. And thank you to thank you to the moderators that were working in the channel. It's the first time having moderators in there. I appreciate you guys all showing them respect as well. And looking forward to doing this again. And Mike, I'm sure our paths will cross again, and possibly us too, Rodney. So once again,
okay,
thank you guys very much. Yep. And wish you a wonderful evening, and we'll talk again.
Thank you, guys. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a wonderful night.